Walls can be placed by opening the Wall tool in the Home tab. By default, a basic generic wall type will be chosen. Walls can be placed by clicking Start and End Locations. Curtain walls can be placed in the same way. First, let's change the wall type to curtain wall. And as with the generic wall type, we can select the beginning and end locations of the walls to place them. Walls can be changed to curtain walls even after they are placed. Using the Modify tool, we can select the wall we want to change and change its type to curtain wall. If multiple walls are selected at once, they can simultaneously be changed by changing their type to curtain wall. Once curtain walls are placed, they can be edited in much the same way as generic walls. After selecting a wall, let us assign a new temporary dimension. Using this process of editing temporary dimensions, we can change both the length and width of our structure. Once curtain walls are placed, let's change the large panels into smaller panels by changing the curtain grid pattern. Let's change the larger panels into smaller panels by changing the curtain grid pattern. First, we will select the curtain wall that we wish to change and edit its type properties. Currently, the vertical and horizontal grid patterns are set to none. Before editing these type properties, let's duplicate the type and rename it Curtain Grid Example. Now, let's change the layout of the vertical grid pattern to Fixed Distance. This will allow us to enter a fixed spacing for each of our vertical grids. Let's also change the horizontal grid pattern to Fixed Distance and assign it a new spacing also. Once the patterns are created, select OK to create the new type. Grid patterns can be easily changed by editing their type. We can change the spacing and repeat the process until the desired pattern is achieved. If we look closer at the panels, we will notice that they are not all equal sizes. The first panel is slightly thinner than the rest. This is because the length of the wall is not evenly divisible by the spacing set in the grid pattern. To change how the extra panel space is distributed, we can select the wall and change the justification property. Currently, the justification is set to beginning, but by selecting center, the uneven panel will be moved to the center of the wall, which is often less noticeable. There are other ways that we can define a grid pattern besides fixed distance. Let's edit the type and change the vertical and horizontal grid pattern layout to fixed number. When done, this will gray out the spacing option, as Revit will calculate this value based on the desired number of panels. Select OK to apply these changes. We can change the desired number of horizontal and vertical grid lines by changing the wall's properties. This option creates equally spaced grid lines, and therefore there is no need to alter the justification. With the grid pattern defined, we can now create mullions, which are metal borders used to support the panels. With the wall selected, edit its type properties. As with the grid patterns, there are both vertical and horizontal mullions. Let's change the interior type to rectangular mullions for both the vertical and horizontal mullions. We can also change border 1 and border 2 to rectangular mullions. This will apply mullions to every grid line segment that we have created. Once these options have been set, we can select OK and the mullions will be displayed in our model. Adding new grid lines to existing curtain walls can be done in multiple ways. Some curtain walls come with existing grid lines, while others do not. To add grid lines, we can select a wall and then open the Curtain Grid tool. In order to place grid lines, we are given three options: all segments, one segment, and all except picked. Let us start by using the All Segments tool, which will create a grid line across the whole panel. By hovering over the horizontal edge of a panel, we can place vertical grid lines. Revit will automatically snap to key points, for example, center lines. Once a panel is split, we can snap to the center line of the new panel. By hovering over the vertical edge of the panel, we can create horizontal grid lines. Once again, we are able to snap to the center line of the panel or divide the panel into thirds. Next, let's use the One Segment tool. This tool will allow us to create a grid line across a single segment instead of across the whole wall. Once again, by hovering over horizontal edges, we can place vertical grid lines. And by hovering over vertical edges, we can create horizontal grid lines. Now, let's use the All Except Picked tool. This tool starts by placing a line across the whole wall, but then we can select segments that we wish to exclude. Once we have chosen the segments to exclude, the new segments will be created. Existing curtain grid lines are easily modified. First, let's select the grid line that we wish to modify. Next, open the Add Remove Segments tool. Using this tool, we can select the segments that we wish to remove, turning the solid line into a dashed line. Multiple segments can be removed at once. We can use the same process to add grid lines. First, click on the grid line that we want to be modified. Open the Add Remove Segment tool and select segments that we want to add, turning the dashed line into a solid line. After curtain grid lines have been created, it is easy to place mullions. To do so, we can open the Mullions tool located under the Home tab. Once again, we are given multiple options to place mullions: grid line segment, and all grid lines. Start by opening the Grid Line tool. We can now simply select the grid lines in order to place the mullions. Notice that the mullions are placed along the whole grid line. The grid lines being used can be changed by selecting a new type. The All Grid Lines tool can be used to place mullions over the whole system. When dealing with a curtain grid system that is not defined by its type to have a pattern, such as this one, it is easy to make modifications. Let's select a mullion. We can now change the location of the segment by changing its temporary dimension. Modifying grid lines is more difficult when dealing with curtain walls that have a defined curtain grid pattern. This curtain wall is currently defined by its type property to have a fixed number of vertical and horizontal grid lines. If we try to select a mullion, we will notice that the element has been locked in place. To unpin an element, we can click the pin icon. Now that the element has been unpinned, we can make alterations to the curtain wall. In order to make major changes, multiple elements can be selected at one time. Holding the Control key while selecting mullions allows us to create one large selection. This selection can now be unpinned simultaneously using the Unpin tool. Once the mullions are unpinned, they can also be deleted simultaneously. With the mullions gone, we can now edit the grid lines. Once again, by holding the Control key, we can select multiple grid lines and unpin them simultaneously. Now we can use the Add Remove Segment tool to remove grid line segments. To select an individual curtain wall panel, move the cursor near the desired panel and press the Tab key until it's highlighted. The grid lines have divided the wall into individual elements, so each panel can be selected separately using the same method. To assign a new type to a panel, we will first select that panel after highlighting it with the Tab key. The current type will be displayed and a new type can be selected. Once again, each panel can be changed into a different type independently of one another. Multiple curtain wall panels can be selected and edited together. Select the first panel after highlighting it with the Tab key. Now we can hover over a second panel, use the Tab key to highlight it, and select it while holding down the Control key. This adds the second panel to the selection. This process can be repeated until we have selected all of the desired panels. When our selection is complete, the number of elements in our selection will be displayed. Now we can change the types of all the selected panels at once. Curtain panels can be assigned existing types, or we can create new types. To create new types of curtain wall panels, select a panel and edit its type properties. First, let's duplicate the current type and change its name from solid white to solid blue. Selecting OK will create the new type. Next, we can click on the Materials field. We are now presented with a list of materials we can now associate with the new panel type. The list on the left includes materials such as wood, metal, and glass. For our purposes, we will choose the material named Blue Panel, and the appearance of the blue panel will be displayed. Clicking OK will apply these changes. This process can be repeated until all the desired panels have been created. Select a panel, edit its type properties, duplicate the type, and rename it. This time we will create a red panel. Now let's select an appropriate material for our new type. When finished, clicking OK will apply these changes and create our new panel type. We can place doors and curtain walls by replacing a panel type. Before doing this, we must first create a panel with appropriate door dimensions. First, let's delete the mullions by selecting them, unpinning them, and finally deleting them. Next, we must delete the grid line segments by selecting a grid line and using the Add Remove Segments tool. Once we have removed the desired mullions and grid line segments, we are left with a door-sized panel that we can turn into a door. We can make doors and curtain walls by changing a panel's type. Let's select our door size panel after highlighting it with the Tab key. Next, let's review the available types. Select the curtain wall single glass type. This will replace our glazed panel with a door panel. If the desired door is not available in the type selector, we can load it into our project by opening the Door tool and then selecting Load Family. Let's open the folder named Doors. In this folder, we will notice that there are multiple curtain wall doors available. Let's select the curtain wall double glass element. While we have loaded this door into the project, we will notice that it is not available as a door type. After opening the Wall tool, the door can also not be found as a wall type. This is because curtain wall doors can only be placed by changing the type of an existing panel. After selecting the door, we are now able to locate the newly loaded door in the type selector. Select this door in order to change the panel type from a single glass door to a double glass door. Now that both doors have been loaded into Revit, we are able to change any panel into a single glass or double glass door simply by selecting it and changing its type.